just a little intro about where I'm from. I am a little bit glad that Salo went a little over time because I'm from the north, so I speak very fast. I have a little bit of a hard time when I'm teaching undergraduate and graduate courses because they have to listen to my recordings at about half speed. So I'm going to do my best to take a breath and speak slowly. But this is a topic that I think is incredibly relevant to the entire beef cattle farmer population, beef cattle producer, because it concerns you and the cow, okay? So as we know, our beef cattle, we have a lot of people leaving the industry. We have a reluctance of the younger generation to sometimes pick up where older generations have left off. Getting started in farming is really hard, so we have an aging farming population. With that comes a little bit less labor, a little bit less help, and sometimes it's really hard to get things done in a safe way. And so we want to have kind of I'm going to talk about it in this presentation, a really good middle ground of where temperament should be. So, let's see if this works. There we go. Okay, so I think it kind of goes without saying, if an animal's stressed, they're not going to produce as well. So I think that's sometimes something that we get a little bit of flack about, that we don't care about our animals, when in reality, you need that animal to be in a state of optimal welfare, or they're not going to produce as well for you, okay? Because stress affects a wide variety of biological processes in the body. Now, that's not to say that all stress is bad. There is good stress, okay? But stress affects the way that that animal is able to maintain themselves. And this is kind of in order of importance, generally. So we have maintenance, development, growth, lactation, reproduction, and fattening. So you can see, although your first priority may be getting that animal bred, that's not her first priority, okay? Her first priority is taking care of herself. If she is not in good body condition score, if she is not in an optimal welfare state, etc., why would she reproduce? Okay, so we like to say reproduction is a luxury. Okay, it's a luxury good that we need. So we need to check all these boxes before our animal will reproduce. There are a few different categories of stress. There's acute stress, okay, that's short-lived, no long-term effects. And then there's chronic stress. That's exposure to a repeated stressor over time. So chronic stress can take place or take form in a variety of formats, okay? Can be chronically exposed to predators, chronically exposed to aversive handling, chronically exposed to different social hierarchies, okay? But chronic stress is usually, effects build long term. And when we're talking about temperament, what we're mostly referring to is a chronic stressor. Okay, that animal is usually in a state of heightened stress, or she has an agitated and aversive response to normal human handling. And those effects can carry over to when you put her out in pasture with a bull. The difficulty with these chronic stressors are they're more difficult to adapt to. So, for example, as we all went through our PhD programs, I noticed myself was undergoing some chronic stress. There was not a lot that I could do about it. It wasn't acute, okay? I didn't have to get through a class or an exam. It was a slow build, right? You get to the end of your PhD program and you realize, whoa, okay, so I've probably aged 10 years. There's a lot more gray hair than I thought I ever would have. So you don't really realize that it's happening until the end when you have some sort of effects. We've talked a lot about the reproductive axis. We haven't mentioned anything about the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, okay? This is a very simplified diagram. And I did steal it from my graduate student, Logan Ramel. She did a fantastic job. I'm not creative at all, so I appreciated me being able to steal this from her. But very simply, I have environmental stressor at the top. This can be environmental in the form of psychological, physiological, physical. Okay, so if the animal gets injured, if they're experiencing hot or cold stress, if we have some aversive handling techniques, all together resulting in a suboptimal welfare state. So then we get production of CRH in the hypothalamus, which leads to production of adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH, in the pituitary gland. That travels to the adrenal glands, which are located on top of the kidney, and we get cortisol release, okay? Cortisol is not always a bad thing, okay? that animal needs some sort of response in order to adapt to or overcome a stressor, okay? Cortisol secretion, the overarching goal is to aid that animal in reestablishing homeostasis. So let's keep it very simple. If that animal is being chased by a wolf, okay, they need a burst of energy, okay? So we need to convert glucose concentration for the brain, we need fat and protein, we need that energy to aid in that fight or flight response. The difficult thing is, when an animal is exposed to a psychological or physiological stressor, we get the same thing. There's no wolf chasing them, okay? Short term, this is great. Elevated cortisol is not always a bad thing. I don't want you to think every time you see elevated cortisol, it's negative. It could be that that animal is just more adept at dealing with stressful situations, but if we have elevated cortisol over the long term, this is where we can get damage to tissues, okay? It's not always a good thing to have elevated cortisol, okay? We need to turn off the light switch every once in a while and give the body a break, okay? When you're thinking about the stress response, all these things that I just listed, this takes energy. And remember, reproduction is a luxury. This is going to come first, running away from the wolf or jaguar or human, etc. Reproduction is going to come last, unfortunately, okay? So why do we care about stress and reproduction? This is, again, very simplistic, okay? There are a lot of mechanisms going on here, but I wanted to keep it kind of broad. Overall, we get suboptimal reproduction. Why is that? Well, we have an increase in cortisol due to a physiologic, psychologic, physical stressor, some sort of environmental stressor, or that the animal is just stressed in general, okay? When this happens prior to an LH surge, energy goes elsewhere, okay? So it's like somebody trying to multitask and there's too much going on. What we get is a negative effect on follicle maturation. Okay, we get a delay in ovulation. When you're talking about a prepubertal animal, we need that inaugural ovulation and normal estrus cycles to signal that she's ready to breed. When you're talking about a cycling cow, we need ovulation so that she can get pregnant. Okay, when this does not happen, we get suboptimal reproduction. Again, this is very simple. There are a lot of factors that go into reproduction, as we've heard about over the past day and then this morning. We are just focusing on stress, so I'm not focusing on the effect of nutrition, the effect of genetics, etc., okay? Now I want to talk about you, okay? Cattle are a prey species, and I don't mean this in a mean way. You are a predator, okay? I say that very nicely. You are a predator. Oh, but she loves me, but she comes when I call. Okay? Yes, you might have a great relationship with her, but you are a predator. Okay, she is designed to protect herself. That human-animal interaction, again, speaking very broadly, can be perceived a few ways. This is her perception, okay? For the purpose of this presentation, I don't care how you felt about the interaction, okay? It's just her. She can perceive it as negative, neutral, or positive. When I went through the handling facility, when I was gathered in the pasture, that was a traumatic experience for me. I'm going to react negatively the next time it happens. When I went through the handling facility, when I was gathered in the pasture, that wasn't so bad. I went through the working facility, nobody died, I didn't get injured. All right. Okay, I'll do it again. We all have those cows. Yeah, last time she came in here, she, ripped a panel off and she tried to hop over, and I don't think she'll come in nice the next time, and you get all the hands on deck to make sure she doesn't tear apart the working facility again. Now, I'm putting a lot of blame on us as handlers, but it is a two-way street, okay? When I was at Oregon State University, when I was starting my master's program, I will never forget there was a coffee cup in the break room that was in the research center, and it said, "Animals are so kind, animals never judge, animals are, so sweet." And I thought, well, you have never worked around cows then, because they are some of the judgiest things that I've ever met. So I understand they have attitudes, okay, but we're focusing on what we can control, right? Okay? Let's talk a little bit about animal productivity. Again, holding all other things constant. Nutrition, genetics, environment, all these things that we know affect animal productivity. Fear of you, or fear of the human, is the single most important factor affecting farm animal productivity. This is across species, not just cattle. Okay, I'm not singling anyone out. Why is that? Because fear results in a stress response. Remember that fight or flight? I'm being chased by a jaguar. I'm being chased by a wolf. I don't like this. We get an increase in cortisol secretion. If that happens chronically over time, other body processes start to fail. Okay, the immune system is compromised. Reproduction, metabolism, all those things don't happen the way that they're supposed to. Okay? So I know you all care for your animals. I know I care for them. Okay? We do the best that we can. Sometimes conditions are not optimal, but one thing that we can control is how we interact with that animal. So let's talk a little bit about fear during interactions. Okay? This is, again, keeping it very simple. We have animals that are afraid of people. Okay? We all have those animals that she comes when I call, all I have to do is open the gate, she's so sweet. There's a little bit in the back of her brain that says, is he going to hurt me? Is she going to hurt me? Okay? There's a little bit of a fear of people. We do need to overcome that fear of people. Sometimes we can't. What we get is signs of stress. In cattle that have excitable temperament, this is exacerbated. Okay? We've all worked with people, and you know, well, if I have a question for such and such, I'm not going to go to this person. I'd rather go to that person because she is really high-strung and she is not, so I'd rather go over here. Okay? Cattle are the same way. They have personalities. Somebody might be a little more high-strung. When this happens, they have a fear of people, a stress response. That excitable temperament means that she overreacts, to put it simply. Okay? It's not an overreaction to her, but it definitely feels like it to us. What we get simply is suboptimal production, okay? She overreacts. She freaks out. Suboptimal production. Unfortunately, this is a repeating cycle, okay? I went through the working facility. I had a terrible experience. I overreacted. I tried to flip myself over. It was horrible for me. Everybody was yelling. I don't want to go back in there again. And we get this fear and this fear to aversive handling, okay? Now, I've said all of this, and I've talked a little bit about excitable temperament, but let's talk about what temperament is. We all have temperament, and it's relatively consistent, okay? It's just the behavioral response of cattle when exposed to normal handling. It's her overreaction. It's her underreaction, okay? That's her temperament. And you all know it. I can tell you a million ways to assess it, but you all know, oh, cow XYZ, she's the one that's psycho and stays in the back all the time. This cow over here, she always comes when I call, okay? You know it better than I do. As cattle temperament worsens, as she gets more excitable, this response to your handling also gets more excitable. So when she gets more high-strung, your interactions with her get more intense, in the pasture, in the working facility, what have you. Fortunately, we can select for temperament. This is that docility trait. It's moderately heritable. Okay, you've all been on your farm where you've said, I'm not keeping this replacement heifer because she came out of a crazy. Or that steer for sure came out of a crazy. Now he's tearing up the working facility. Okay, you've seen it with your own eyes. Why do we select for docility? Mainly for safety reasons for yourself. Nobody wants to get run over or have their lunch eaten. Okay, but it does have production implications. Now, I've talked a lot about, well, excitable temperament means that she doesn't produce as well, she's not safe for you. So do we want the cow that is very calm? Do we want the cow that is kind to you? The cow that comes when you call? Maybe, but not necessarily. So I want you to think about a time when cattle behavior was memorable. Okay? When did you decide cow XYZ was crazy? Was it when she came into the working facility for vaccines, dewormer? Okay. Was it when she came into the working facility for estrus synchronization or for AI? Was it when you drove by her in the pasture? No. Usually cows are designated as, that's the psycho one, she's getting cold this year when she has a calf. Okay? We've all seen those videos on Facebook, and we've all laughed, ha ha ha, that's so funny, the cow tried to get in the side-by-side. Okay? Might be funny for us, not necessarily for the human handler. So we have all been in those pastures with this cow right here. You go out there and you say, well, today's the day, okay? And I wanted to put up a scene up here. If anybody, I'm sure everyone has seen Jurassic Park at this time, when they take the little dinosaur who has a hurt leg and the dad and the mom T-Rex try to kill everything, okay? Sometimes that's what it feels like you're fighting something out of this world. That's when you usually say, that's it, I'm done, she's out, it's not worth it, this isn't safe anymore, okay? Because we need to collect that data. We need to go out and tag that calf. We need to make sure it's nursed. We need to make sure she's okay. We need to make sure everything's going fine. We need the data for all of these presentations that we've heard about. We need that birth weight, et cetera, growth rates, okay? I have to get out here and I have to tag your calf, so please don't eat me. Fortunately for us, this behavior usually lasts a few weeks, okay? Myself, when I had my daughter, it lasted a little bit longer than that for me, okay? And I won't apologize for it either. So I said some things that I probably shouldn't have said to my husband, but at that point, we've all been there. So when do you label her as crazy? Usually when she calves, right? There are some outliers that when they come into the working facility, they tear it up every time. I want to talk a little bit about maternal aggression, okay? Maternal aggression, mothering ability. Wouldn't it be great if we had a system to designate some sort of threshold? We have a lot of measurements and a lot of systems that are well established in the literature for assessing cattle temperament when she gets to the working facility. Why don't we have one for maternal aggression? Well, a lot of factors can influence this. Did she have a difficult birth? How old is she? Are there predators nearby? Did another cow try to steal her baby? Okay? Is the calf nursing? Is she uncomfortable? So that's why it makes it a little hard, okay? But like I said, cattle are prey species. It's good that she protects her young. She doesn't know the difference between you and a wild dog. Like I said, you're a predator. You're going to take her baby. She should protect that baby. Unfortunately for us, the way she reacts in those moments influences calf health and productivity. If she doesn't react, she might say, it's been nice knowing you, and let the wild dog drag her calf off, okay? If she overreacts, that's when you get injured, okay? Or she could be flighty, try to attack you and then leave the calf. That was a terrible experience for me, and I'm abandoning the calf. Overall, it raises a lot of safety concerns for us and the animal, okay? We don't want the animal to be hurt. So this was a study that was conducted out of the Prairie Research Unit for about 5 years, and it was creation of this novel scoring system. Does this have any merit for maternal aggression, okay? I'm only presenting a tiny bit of this data. It was an entire PhD student's dissertation, okay? But we have maternal aggression. 1, the dam is not attentive when you go to tag the calf. All calves were tagged within 24 hours of birth. Dam is not attentive, shows an absolute lack of interest, doesn't care. All the way up to 5, dam is not a bluff cow, okay? She's not lying, she doesn't care, and she's seeing red, okay? These cows were scored on this scale from 1 to 5. We had over 2,000 data points, okay, over 5 years. And what's interesting, what we saw, this is just for multiparous dams, is that maternal aggression score was impacted by cow age. As she gets older, she got crankier. She got a little bit less tolerant of us coming in here. Here you come again on that side-by-side with your tagger, and here we go again. She got a little bit less tolerant of us, okay? We've all seen those cows that snap. She's nice one day and mean the other. But the piece of data that I really want to draw your attention to is weaning rate. Those cows that had a maternal aggression score of 1, super calm, easy to tag her calf, she's a little bit nervous around you, but she doesn't give you any safety concerns, weaned 69% of their calves compared to the maternal aggression scores of 2, 3, 4, and 5, who weaned about 90% of their calves. So the cow that eats your lunch weans more calves than the cow who makes your job easier in that moment of tagging. What was also interesting is we looked at calving interval for these cows, and you can see that those cows that had a more intense, or the cows that weren't bluff cows, had a shorter calving interval. Well, that doesn't make any sense. If she's aggressive, she's stressed. And I just said that stress impacts reproduction. And we all know that excitable temperament impacts reproduction. So why are those cows that are aggressive, why are they calving in a shorter calving interval than those cows who are nice and chill? It doesn't make any sense, right? And that's because I just said temperament is consistent. We've all been through experiences, like I said, with my own daughter. That was not me, okay? I'm a different person now. I'm nicer. But what I want to highlight is that there's two different ways that you can assess temperament. That's why we're talking about this data. You remember her maternal behavior. You remember how psychotic she was, okay? This is data from 2005 out of another lab, and it just shows calf survivability, and same with our data set. As the dam gets more aggressive at the time of tagging or calf processing, more calves survive. That makes sense. She's more willing to put herself in the line of fire and fight off predators. That calf probably nursed better. She was more attentive. She was a better mom. But none of that is worth getting injured. Okay? So we have to come up with some sort of system. We have to compromise with her. Okay? You can be a little crazy. I'll be a little crazy. But we have to meet in the middle sometimes. Like I said, maternal behavior is affected by a variety of factors. Breed, okay? Calving difficulty. Did you just approach her after she had a difficult birth and is real cranky? Okay, so what I'm saying is that we do need more research on this, and we are working on that at Prairie. Okay, did you come up to tag her calf right after she fought off a predator? And she's like, here we go again. I just got rid of that wild dog, now you're here. Okay, she might be a little short-tempered. Some protection is necessary. We want that cow to protect against the predator. We don't want her to eat your lunch. Unfortunately, there's really no established system of measurement. There's been a lot of retrospective studies done. There's no real established system of measurement. So it's something that we are currently working on at Prairie, is creating this system of measurement and then correlating it with some other temperament measures taken later on in the cow's life to see if we can really get a holistic picture of her attitude. Okay? Nobody wants to be judged on a bad day, right? The same for your cows. So how do we assess temperament? What's the established way? It's when they come in the working facility and all things are mostly constant. Okay, we do this through chute score and exit velocity. Chute score, cattle are individually restrained in a chute. Can be a squeeze chute, can be not a squeeze chute. Be consistent, okay? So if you are, the cow is entering the chute, and then you are waiting 5 minutes after processing and then assigning a chute score, do it every time. I suggest doing it right when the cow gets in the chute to get her reaction, okay? So we have 1, calm, no movement, super chill, to 5, violent and continuous struggling. She's shaking the whole chute the whole time, really wants to leave. Exit velocity is, we like to combine chute score and exit velocity because chute score is your opinion. Exit velocity is a real quantitative measurement that you can get. It just measures her flight speed as she exits the chute. How scared is she? How badly does she want to get away? So we use infrared sensors, okay? You can do this visually. I highly recommend using the infrared sensors for those of you who are in research. So you do it over a predetermined distance, and then you can get her flight speed in meters per second, feet per second, okay? If she jumps out of the chute and jumps over the sensors, that's a missing data point, okay? You don't just get to assign her infinite flight score. But you can also do it visually. When you open the chute, did she walk away? Did she trot away? Was she fleeing? How badly did she want to get away? It's a really good indicator of her fear response. Okay, this is just a picture of those infrared sensors. So just at the right height so that they can capture as the cow exits the chute. We average those to give her a temperament score. Why? Because sometimes one is not fair. Okay, so she gets assigned a chute score and exit velocity score. Based on the exit score, she gets assigned an or based on her exit velocity, she gets assigned an exit score. That gets transformed into the average of the shoot score and exit velocity, which is her temperament score. It's usually between 1 and 5, okay? So what is her temperament type? We say less than 3, adequate. Greater than 3, excitable. Okay, so if she's at a 3, we might have some concerns about her. But we want to maintain some temperament in the herd, like I said. We don't want cows that are 1s and 2s because they might let you tag their calf. They might be easy to work, but they're also going to let the wild dog run away with her calf. Okay? So some factors affecting temperament. Breed. Like I said, I'm from the north, so I worked with my first Bos Indicus influenced cattle when I got to Texas, and I was not prepared. I thought, seriously? I went home, I called my mom, I said, I don't know if this is for me. I need to rethink every choice that's led me to here because I have never experienced such fear myself in my life, okay? So, breed. I think that's fair. Bos Indicus cattle are more temperamental. Experience and fear. Are these cattle reared in a more intensive environment or an extensive environment? Is the only time that those animals see people on foot when they come to the working facility? They're used to seeing you on horseback, so when they get to the working facility and see you on foot, they don't know what that is, and they freak out. Okay, range cattle are in more extensive conditions. They might be a little bit more temperamental. I didn't want to put this bullet point up there, but sex of the animal affects it. Okay, females are more temperamental than males. I will tell you, though, that the female cow goes through more than the male cow, okay? So I feel that it's earned. I read this slide multiple times, and I said, that's not fair. And I said, well, age. Younger animals are more temperamental. Well, that doesn't make sense, Kelsey, because you just told me that maternal aggression score goes up as the cow gets older. Well, like I said, that's a snapshot in time, okay? Older cows are a little bit more cranky when you tag their calves, at least to our research unit. But generally, younger animals are a little bit harder to get through the working facility. They don't know that when they go in there, they're not going to die, okay? You need to show them those positive experiences in the chute to make it easier for you to work them on routine handling and also during emergency situations. Okay, why do I care about temperament? You've talked a lot about it. What is it going to do to my cattle? Temperament reduces feed intake, okay? If they are highly stressed, if they are of excitable temperament, their feeding intervals or non-feeding intervals are greater, okay? Meal time's a little bit different. Those cattle might have reduced feed intake, okay? So this is just some data out of a dry lot, actually, and I just picked it because I thought it really highlighted this nicely. So we have cattle that were classified based on their exit score, so faster and slower, okay? So just exit score, not overall temperament score. And you can see dry matter intake, less, and average daily gain was less for cattle that were faster compared to those that were slower, okay? What about stress? Okay, cattle with excitable temperament or who are classified as excitable have greater circulating plasma cortisol, at least at the time of sampling. Plasma cortisol is also a snapshot in time. Okay, it happens fast. But I just put this here to show cattle classified as adequate have lower circulating cortisol than those classified as excitable during the time of routine handling. This also shows the impact of plasma cortisol or elevated plasma cortisol on puberty attainment, okay? Replacement heifers have to reach puberty at least by 12 months of age so they can have a couple of cycles before first breeding, and they should have high conception rates to first breeding by 15 months of age. So you want those heifers, like we've talked about in other presentations, you want them to reach puberty at an adequate age. You want them to reach puberty early, right? So they have more estrus cycles to get through. So like we were talking about, age is usually a factor. But holding all other things constant, if we just rank animals by those who, within this study, reached puberty at 12 months of age or those that did not, and then look at their average plasma cortisol over the entire sampling period, those animals that were non-pubertal, again, holding everything else constant, had greater average plasma cortisol than those who were not. There were a lot of other things going on in this study, but like I said, holding other things constant. Let's talk a little bit about temperament in heifers. This study was done in Bos indicus influenced heifers, so I want to say you breed them at 15 months of age, okay? They're a little bit delayed. So this is purely Bos indicus heifers. You can see that cattle were classified as excited or adequate at the beginning of this study. Plasma cortisol, as you'd expect, greater in excitable heifers, okay? Body condition score, greater in adequate heifers. That makes sense. Average daily gain, also greater in adequate heifers. That's because they eat a little bit better. They have greater nutrients, can go to growth and maintenance as opposed to stress. Pubertal heifers by day 91 of the study, percent is double in adequate heifers. That's fantastic, right? Age at puberty was also less in heifers that were declared adequate. Same story for body weight at puberty. Those heifers were heavier at the time of puberty. Okay, so heifers that were classified as adequate are more efficient reproductively, at least in this Bos indicus study. Let's talk about cows. Pregnancy rates in this study were negatively affected by temperament. I didn't put all of the data up here for the sake of time, but you can see when you look at this data that a linear relationship exists between probability of becoming pregnant and temperament assessed at the very beginning of the breeding season. So at the beginning of the breeding season, if she is very excitable, probability of becoming pregnant goes down. At the beginning of the breeding season, if she is classified as adequate, higher chance of becoming pregnant. Again, holding all other things constant, days postpartum, body condition score, etc. Okay? What else? Let's talk a little bit more about pregnancy rate in those Bos indicus cows. Pregnancy rate, like I just mentioned, greater or tended to be greater in cows classified as adequate at the beginning of the breeding season. What's interesting is that pregnancy loss was greater in those excitable cows. Why is that? Dr. Poehler is going to talk a little bit later today about maintaining pregnancy, so please ask him why that is. So save your questions for him. Additionally, what's interesting, as you'd expect, because those cows lost more pregnancies, weaning rate was the same, okay? Or calving rate, weaning rate was greater for cows that were classified with adequate temperament. Those cows that were a little bit more chill. They were also more efficient in terms of calf weaning body weight, as well as kilograms of calf weaned per cow exposed. Okay, perfect. We want cows that are a little bit more chill, but what happens, how do we correlate that with her score at the time of calving? And what's the threshold? Should I just select all the cows that are a score 1 for a temperament score? Or do I want cows that are about at a 3? Okay? Again, same story here. What's interesting here, cows were classified as adequate or temperamental at the beginning of the breeding season. Plasma cortisol was collected and also hair cortisol. So I just said plasma cortisol has a lot of confounding factors. It's a snapshot in time. Did she trip on the way into the chute? Were we yelling at her? Did she get bullied by somebody else? Is she sick? Okay? It increases pretty rapidly in response to a stressor. Okay? So it's a snapshot in time. What's interesting in this study is that we took hair cortisol samples because hair has the capability, hair has memories, right? Hair has the ability to store hormones and metabolites. So it's a really good indicator of her stress over time. Okay, we say we can take about a centimeter, and that's 14 days-ish, depending on, and we take it from the tail switch. Okay? So as long as you're consistent in terms of sampling, where you take the hair, color of the hair, etc. What was interesting with these cows, those that were classified as excited or adequate, we had no difference in hair cortisol. So we assumed those cows who are classified as excitable at the beginning of the breeding season are also psycho when they go into the pasture. Okay? Maybe not necessarily the case here, because we expected cows with excitable temperament are going to have elevated hair cortisol because they're just high-strung all the time. That didn't happen here. We still don't know why. Okay? Again, I'm not a geneticist. There's some sort of relationship between temperament and reproduction, and I leave that to greater minds than myself. But regardless, cows that were classified as excitable at that time of breeding, at the beginning of the breeding season, had reduced pregnancy rates, which we attributed to greater circulating cortisol during handling. Okay, a lot of things happen at the time of breeding. Now let's talk about Bos taurus cows, the nice ones, right? Same story here. Cows that were classified as excitable had decreased pregnancy rate, had increased pregnancy loss. What's also interesting is that these cows were, I probably switched that, those cows were actually less efficient. Same story, okay? So how do we improve temperament? You've told me that it's a problem. How do I improve it? We can select for temperament, okay? That's, like I said, moderately heritable. You can select sires that are moderately docile. Cull aggressive cows, okay? Cows that come after you are not worth it. Unfortunately, regardless of what I just said here, at least in my own experience, the cows that are psycho always end up pregnant. So then you have a little bit of, do I sell her? Well, one more year will do it. Next year she won't be bred. It's always those ones that push the limits, okay? There's outliers in every data set. You want to maintain some temperament, okay? You don't want cows who are too calm. How frustrating is it to work a cow who is so acclimated to you that you have to basically lay on her to get her to walk through the chute, okay? It's just makes me so mad, okay? So you want to maintain some temperament. You want her to have a healthy fear of you, okay? When you walk up behind her and put up pressure, she needs to move, okay? We have business to do. You have to do your job. But you also don't want her to run you over. That's not worth it either, okay? I thought it was funny when I was in grad school. Now that I'm older, I can't jump over a fence as fast anymore. So it's not funny anymore. Adequate handling of animals, okay? It's a two-way street. Being calm, having adequate facilities, monitoring between aggressive and docile animals. We all have those cows that can get the whole group worked up. But also think about acclimation to human handling. Like I said, cows who don't see you, cows will forget. Okay, if you don't see them often, work them often, when you go to work them, it's like a surprise every time, a new experience. So let's talk about acclimation to human handling. In this study, at 2 different locations, we're using grazing heifers. They exposed heifers to acclimation or not for just 4 weeks. Okay, just 4 weeks, and the acclimation was 3 days a week, and all it was walk the heifers to the working facility, walk them through the chute, let them go. So catch them, let them go. Nothing happened. They were just acclimated to the working facility 3 days a week, okay? Things that were evaluated, growth, temperament, and reproduction. What's interesting, pre-acclimation plasma cortisol was the same between acclimated and non-acclimated heifers. So I think it's important to note that at the beginning of these studies, heifers were assessed for temperament score and then assigned to either acclimated or not acclimated. So temperament score was balanced between treatments. Post-acclimation, after those 4 weeks, when those acclimated heifers came through the working facility, they had decreased plasma cortisol compared to their control cohorts. Okay, it worked, right? We acclimated them. They're a little bit less stressed when they come to the working facility. That was just 4 weeks. Look at what happens with percent of pubertal heifers. Heifers that were exposed to very simple, routine acclimation to human handling had accelerated puberty attainment compared to control cohorts. That's great, right? Because the more estrus cycles that she has before the beginning of the breeding season, likelihood that she's going to conceive. Same story here when we look at pregnancy rate. Okay, heifers that were acclimated to human handling, more of them became pregnant earlier in the breeding season. That's great. We've talked extensively about how earlier calving heifers are more efficient biologically and economically, and they maintain their longevity in the herd when they calve in that first window. Again, same story with the other study. Okay, acclimated heifers reach puberty at an accelerated rate compared to control cohorts. Okay, so this was done with Bos indicus influenced and then with Bos taurus heifers, so demonstrating across breeds. Acclimation to human handling, why is it important? Because you're scary. Okay? The first time you do something, it's a little scary. The 100th time you do something, it's less scary. Think about the first time you drove a car. For me, the first time I got on the freeway, I'll never forget it, I was scared to death. Now I don't care. Okay, it's the same with cows when they go through the working facility. Acclimation to human handling decreased plasma cortisol at the time of handling, accelerated puberty attainment, and was demonstrated across breeds. Perfect, works in both subspecies. No positive effects were observed for mature cows. The same thing was done with mature cows and made no difference. Why? It could be that they're biased. It could be that previous experiences that they've had have already cemented them in that I don't like going to this working facility. Cows are also reared in extensive conditions, whereas heifers we usually pay a little bit more attention to when they're younger. Okay, so we have an opportunity to create that bond with them or to kind of imprint that you're not going to die when you come into the working facility or when I come into the pasture. So we need some additional strategies. Okay, it doesn't always work. This study I found, I thought it was very interesting. We've talked a little bit about assisted reproductive technologies and how we can incorporate those into the herd. This study evaluated the effect of an NSAID, a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, on success of embryo transfer in excitable versus adequate cows. Okay, so the whole goal here was to decrease concentrations of prostaglandin F2 alpha using this NSAID. Okay, so can we give this drug to cows who are excitable and increase pregnancy rates? Can this overcome? Interestingly, yes. Okay, prostaglandin F2 alpha metabolites, which is what was measured in the plasma, just as the authors expected, decreased in cows who were classified as excitable at the beginning of the breeding season and received the NSAID. Okay, perfect. No difference in the calm cows. It didn't make a difference for them. They were already calm. Same thing with pregnancy rates. Cows who were classified as excitable and received the NSAID had increased pregnancy rates compared to their cohorts who were classified as excitable and did not receive the NSAID. Okay? And this is success of embryo transfer, not just pregnancy rate. Okay? I thought this study was very interesting because I think we have to start exploring some other methods and options. One topic that gets quite a bit of attention is this maternal bovine appeasing substance. Okay? What is an appeasing pheromone? They're sex-specific, they're species-specific. When we talk about the maternal bovine appeasing substance, it's a synthetic analog, okay? So it's just a mixture of fatty acids in an excipient. It mimics the pheromone that is secreted by the dam near the mammary gland region, okay? So provides some sort of indication of comfort, of home, of safety, okay? So the idea is if you give this substance, which is applied topically, if you give it, you'll induce some sort of calming effect. Everything is okay. It's like, you know, when you get really stressed and you smell lavender, okay? Or you drink a chamomile tea. Okay, I'm gonna be fine, right? I wanted to show this data because there's really not a lot in the realm of reproduction, but I did want to show some things that we did at Texas A&M. So we have our control, our bovine appeasing substance. What's interesting here, we looked at hair cortisol, and it was less for calves that received bovine appeasing substance at the time of weaning for 14 days after weaning. Okay, so it has a short life, and then hair cortisol concentrations went back up at day 28 and day 42. Okay, so we effectively applied bovine appeasing substance to highly stressed calves at weaning, or they received a placebo, which was mineral oil. Okay. We decreased the stress response chronically over 14 days in calves that received bovine appeasing substance. What was also interesting is we looked at exit velocity. Okay, did we improve temperament? So it's important to note that in this study, temperament was balanced across treatments. Okay, what was interesting is during those initial 14 days, because calves were processed quite frequently for sample collection, is that we decreased exit velocity in those initial 14 days in calves that received bovine appeasing substance. Okay, so it should follow that this might improve pregnancy rates in cows that are classified as excitable at the time of breeding, right? If we can improve temperament in cows that are classified as excitable. Unfortunately, we don't have research to demonstrate that yet, but I know a lot of those in extension get many questions about bovine appeasing substance, so I did want to bring it up. There is substantial research in the realm of preconditioning, feedlot receiving, and some in stocker cattle demonstrating positive effects of bovine appeasing substance, okay, that it decreases the stress response, reduced treatments to recover from disease. It made those animals calmer, okay, so you can identify disease a little bit faster. So it could have the potential. We need a little bit more research to back it up. Also in dairy cows, before they were turned out to pasture, they received bovine appeasing substances. It improved somatic cell count and milk production, or reduced somatic cell count and improved milk production. That's positive, okay? I say all this to say we don't have the research. I'm not going to be able to answer that question today, whether it's going to improve puberty attainment, reproduction rates in cows who are classified as excitable, cows or heifers, okay? But in other sectors of the beef production industry, it has exhibited positive effects. So more research is needed. One abstract that I was able to find did demonstrate that heifers who received bovine appeasing substance at the time of estrus synchronization had an increased estrus response. Heifers who were classified as excitable, that is, okay? So that means they responded to the estrus synchronization. The study was done with a really low number of animals, so detecting differences in pregnancy rate really wasn't feasible. But additional research is needed. So again, I'm not going to be able to answer that question today, but we're trying. Okay, we're exploring all those options for you. So in conclusion, excitable temperament is detrimental to reproductive performance of beef females. Okay, being crazy doesn't get you anywhere. It decreases overall productivity of the beef operation, okay, because cows that are less efficient reproductively are bringing you less money. They're freeloaders. Strategies to overcome that are proven, that we have the research for. Proper handling techniques, okay, adequate facilities, selection and or acclimation. So you can select for those animals that are adequately temperamental. You can also acclimate animals to handling, okay? Run them through the chute a couple times, work them quite frequently. I know at the Prairie Research Unit, we do so many studies and those animals are so used to us that you just have to open the gate and up the lane they come. Okay, we do have a couple of those cows that one day are gonna get run over because they just don't move, but those cows have been worked so many times that they just work themselves, okay? Incorporation of alternative strategies, and I say this broadly because we need more research that shows that the NSAID, bovine appeasing substance, et cetera, actually works and is repeatable across experiments and across different environmental conditions and breeds. Incorporation into a comprehensive herd management program, okay? Just doing this at the time of breeding, at the time of AI, at the time of estrus synchronization is not enough, okay? The animal is temperamental throughout her life, okay? You want to maintain some temperament. There's practicalities of predator management, like I've said repeatedly. The other point that I want to bring home is I know that I mentioned a little bit about maternal aggression and mothering ability and temperament score. We don't know what the relationship between those is yet. We were very surprised when we saw that data at the Prairie Research Unit. So we are currently working on collecting temperament score throughout that animal's production cycle and seeing how it correlates to her maternal aggression or mothering ability at the time of calf processing. Are those animals who are more aggressive at the time of calf processing more excitable at the time of normal or working? Is there no relationship? Is it the opposite? We don't know yet, but we are working on that. And so with that, I'll thank you and take any questions.
This is a two-parter. The first one is with your infrared rate of the animal exiting the chute area. Will it pick up the human being exiting the chute area also at that time? And secondly is the product that we may have been seeing recently for like stocker animals and things, that therapies, is that something that, I know you don't like to talk about brand things, is that what you're speaking of a little bit, that product scenario? Can you address those two?
Okay, so your first question is, does the infrared sensor pick up a human exiting the chute? 100%. Okay. As a graduate student, you test the scale, you test everything. I mean, we have collected samples from each other, like we've done it all. So yes, that's how you test it, is by sprinting through that, okay? In answer to your second question, the therapies that you're talking about is a product that is that maternal bovine appeasing substance. So I don't know if it's going to help reproduction. But yeah, like you said, it has been demonstrated in cattle that are high risk in those very high stress situations, weaning, transport, feedlot entry, that it does improve performance and reduces incidence of illness. Don't know about reproduction yet. It could be that that's not a high enough threshold stressful time. So
when the cortisol is spiked, is there a a study that shows how much time it takes for that to correct?
So when cortisol spiked, is there a study that shows the time it takes for that to correct? Usually within a couple of hours, but it depends. If the animal is experiencing prolonged stressors, if they're up at the working facility for a long period of time, or are they getting sampled and immediately going back to their pen? It really depends. In a study that we did at Oregon State, we induced this artificial stress response using corticotropin releasing hormone, and it did spike and come back down right away. But that's just because animals were sampled and they went back to their pen. So.
All right, let's thank Dr. Harvey.